Hi again, Doug Heilholtz here for FTH 212 striker fired pistols. This is my Module 2 assignment. Today we've just completed our PSA dagger build. So we're going to be using this as an example while doing various tasks for three different parts of our assignment today. So first and foremost, safety first. I got my iPro on. We'll go ahead and show there is nothing in the fetus source. There's no ammunition on or around my bench. I'll go ahead and lock it to the rear. And I did have a chamber flag here somewhere, because it's a little difficult to see, light, dark, and everything, so it's a bit easier with this. So starting everything off in this form, I will remove it, and we're gonna go through our functions check as well for part one. So talking through the weapon system here and getting a functions check going, weapon's already clear, so we'll just go ahead and rack it to the rear one time. We're gonna try and manipulate our trigger. So as you can see, when I get a little bit closer here, we're gonna try and manipulate the trigger without hitting the safety lever on the trigger, so it will not go. All right, we'll go ahead and squeeze the trigger by manipulating the safety lever. Trigger fires. We'll hold it to the rear and charge it. Now we're gonna check our reset. So let's go and slowly allow the trigger to go forward till we hear the click. All right, that is our reset. And we pull the trigger again, that's our brake. Hold it to the rear and charge it. Let's go ahead and let it go back forward. Check the trigger one more time without activating the safety. Nothing happens, okay. So now we're gonna go back through, insert our magazine. Magazine doesn't come out without hitting the button. We'll lock to the rear. All right, it locks to the rear, full weapon lockup. We'll go ahead and drop that slide. Okay, we're gonna check out the safety one last time to make sure that it's not gonna be manipulated without hitting the safety lever. Pull the trigger again, back to the rear. We'll just drop the mag, allow it to go forward. Now, working our way through the cycle of operations on this weapon system, first step being first, we go ahead and put our source of feed in, so that's our feeding step. When the weapon's locked to the rear like this, it's actually unlocked. So the barrel is unlocked on the locking block, which puts it in basically a feed ramp down position over the top of the follower here, so that when the breech face starts to slide forward, when I allow it to go forward, it will feed that next round. So that will be our feeding and chambering process of the operation. While that breech face continues to go forward, we have a continuation of our cocking mechanism as well. So when this weapon is in its first stance here, as I set the magazine in, it can't do anything unless it's got a round in the chamber. So having to put that round in the chamber sends this thing into an entire series of actions. So again, if we lock to the rear without firing, we're now completing our feeding and getting ready to get into chambering, loading, and then finishing the cocking sequence before we fire. So while this is happening, when the slide comes to the rear, due to its design with the trigger bar and the connector, they are actually separated slightly, and they begin the trigger cocking and reset process as the trigger begins to move forward. This process finishes out and completes the cocking process with the striker as well whenever the slide goes forward and continues and finishes out their charging, if you will. So they become fully cocked. So now we're ready to fire. We have, now when the slide's forward, we're fully cocked, all right, and the weapon's locked back into the locked position, meaning the barrel is stopped and it's fully forward positioned, it's ready to fire. Everything's aligned and it's ready to go, booger hooks and pew. So, long story short, now we got firing. As we fire, the recoil from the round actually blows back the action. When this happens, our frame-mounted extractor will actually extract the round, and it bounces off of the ejector, swinging it out so that it creates a feeding path for the next round to go in. And, that basically gives us all 8 steps of our cycle of function. We've gone through and talked about feeding, chambering, locking, firing, extracting, ejecting, unlocking, all of them. We got them all. So, now we'll move on to a couple other more descriptive things. I'm going to put this in the vise for measuring the barrel as well, which we're going to do, and I'll talk you through as well. Now, while doing the setup, it was a very, very simple operation. It's not something that I would do like in the cab of my truck because of all the roll pins, small springs, things like that, but it is something that can be done generally in a field as well whenever it comes to putting a Glock clone together. They are very simple. When in the shop, I always like to use magnets to separate things. I also like to make a detailed layout of what I'm going to work on when, so that I don't confuse parts and get them in the wrong places. Certain things that I use for this operation, I used a sight pusher, which I've had for probably 5 years now for tools. I've used the 5/32 standard steel punch, and then the 1/8 inch and 5/64 inch roll pin punches. Roll pin punch, the 5/64 was for the trigger, and the 1/8 inch roll pin punch was for the 2 roll pins that are in the frame that aren't your standard Glock pins. We also utilized a channel liner. I've never used one of these. This was the first for me. And I had my own front sight tool, but I got a second one with the course. So besides using my block, a set of pliers, and a mallet to pound on things, that was it. That's all I needed for tools. Unfortunately, this is not my ideal setup. I could do work here as I'm set up in my wood shop, but my actual reloading room is the room that's not finished here next to me. So I've got a lot of work to do in there before that becomes my reloading and gunsmithing room. This will work for now, but it's not permanent. So hopefully that answers all 4 questions for part 1. In part 2, we're going to talk through how we need to go about measuring our barrel length on this. So very simple task. All you need is a rifle rod that has its own bearing in it. Okay. We really don't need the tape today. I thought we were going to check for our twist ratio, but it's not required out of the assignment. So we ended up putting our adapter on so that this doesn't poke into the breech face and cause any issues. But this is super simple. I've got my cleared weapon sitting in the vise here. All I'm going to do is enter from the breech face or enter from the crown, and I'm going to measure the length of the barrel here, which the ATF views on a striker fired pistol. It is from the crown to the breech face. So that's the length of the barrel. So we've marked it with our color pencil here so we can see it, and it lines right up at 4 inches. So it's a 4-inch barrel. All right, and then for part 3. So talking through part 3, I ended up calling a really good friend of mine. He was one of my platoon leaders whenever I was a platoon sergeant at Fort Bragg. He is probably one of the best pistol smiths I know. Me being a long gun guy and understanding twist ratios and so on, my understanding from the research that I did, I couldn't find a solid answer without providing these few facts. Twist ratio speed has to do with bearing surface of the bullet and weight. So the more bearing surface you have for the length of a bullet, like let's say we want to go over here, where's all my reloading stuff? So none of these are open. Anywho, long story short, the longer the bullet, the faster twist it needs to stabilize coming out of the barrel. The one big difference is this is a 1 in 16 twist ratio, just like the revolver that we had and so on, just like a lot of pistols are. That slow of a twist ratio, that means I get 1 revolution out of my bullet for every 16 inches of barrel. That's a 4-inch barrel. So I think the key difference is in a rifle, chances are I'm at least going to get 1 revolution out of my barrel, as long as it's not some, pistol caliber or rifle caliber sub-pistol AR that people are using nowadays. If it's a true pistol, I haven't seen a 16-inch barrel on a Glock or any other striker fired pistol for that matter. So the round does not get a full revolution to stabilize coming out of the barrel, whereas in a rifle it will. So that would be the 2 key differences between the 2, in my opinion. Hopefully that answers your questions. We'll have another video next week. Well, actually this week. I'm late on this one, so I've got to do better. Hopefully we've got better content for you this next week. I'm sorry the last 2 videos, we really haven't done a lot of fun stuff that we did like with the revolvers. So I'm hoping we get more into the gunsmithing aspect of things and really start getting into the minutia of this thing and hopefully make it better.